Time now for the markets with Artis Ford.
And of course, Leighton Spann not with us this evening, but as we look forward, a big surprise in one sector from Tuesday's USDA reports. John Michael Riley will have our analysis in just a moment. Also this week, the European Union's energy policy may hurt U.S. soybean prices. The break in cattle the first week of April may have run its course, and U.S. pork exports continue to grow. Many private analysts had expected Tuesday's supply and demand report update from the government to show tighter stocks of corn and soybeans. There was a big surprise in corn. Extension Ag economist John Michael Riley joined Leighton Spann in the studio a few hours after the report's release to discuss the new numbers.
Let's begin by talking about corn, what this supply and demand update said, and why that kind of caught the market by surprise.
Well, the release of the World Ag Supply and Demand this morning said that corn ending stocks, production, supply use, no changes across the board there. 801 million bushels of carryover from this year to the next year, which was what they projected last month. The market was looking for that number to be a little over 700 million bushels. So it really did surprise the market. We've seen it nearby contracts down pretty hard, more deferred contracts not quite as bad, but it did take traders by the market by surprise, especially given the grain stocks report that we got a little over a week ago that showed grain on hand in elevators across the country that was lower than many expected. So I think there was a consensus that we have been burning through more corn than was expected, which would pull this ending stocks number down, and it just didn't show up in today's report.
So there are surprises sometimes, despite today's accurate reporting. What about soybeans? Let's look at those now. What did this new supply and demand number say?
Well, it did pull, the report dropped soybean ending stocks by about 25 million bushels from 275 to 250. The market was looking for that number to be about 246, so no huge surprise on the soybean front. Grain stocks report, again, kind of similar story there, no big surprise in regard to soybeans. The market is down a little bit today as a result of corn, just some spillover there. So overall, soybeans didn't really have quite the punch that corn did. Going back even further, look at acreage. I think that both of these markets have been fighting for acreage. Corn acreage came in much higher than expected, higher than even the highest pre-report estimate. Soybeans were down. Those markets have been traveling in that type of same slopes ever since.
Mm-hmm. All right, let me ask you, cotton planting. I mean, will this situation, what we see in these numbers, is that likely to impact cotton planting as we move forward here?
Well, if you look at corn plantings in the state, 80% planted, soybeans a little 57% planted. Both of those are above average. Nationally, corn plantings are above average. It's going to be hard to really, make a switch gears this fast, especially given where we are at with plantings. It could happen, though. I wouldn't be surprised, but I wouldn't be totally shocked if it did. But I doubt it's going to be any huge acreage shifts as a result of today's report or last week's report.
The second largest market for U.S. soybean exports is putting up a roadblock of sorts as far as soy biodiesel. The European Union's renewable energy policy excludes all biodiesel from U.S. soybean oil. The Europeans dispute Chekhov-funded research that shows that the fuel reduces greenhouse gas emissions by over 35%. One study estimates that the action by the EU could actually decrease U.S. soybean prices by as much as 35 cents per bushel in the future. The American Soybean Association is working to have the EU's energy policy amended. Well, on a more positive note for renewable fuels, E15 ethanol is another step closer to reaching the market. The EPA has approved the first applications for registration of the blend. The mixture of E15 ethanol and 85% gasoline could be used only in vehicles made in 2001 and after. Proponents of E15 note that the price difference between wholesale ethanol and wholesale gasoline have been averaging over $1 a gallon recently. Well, it's time to look at this week's trivia question on Farm Week. Let's see how well you know the various tools involved in agriculture. Well, a dibble bar is used in which agriculture sector? Is the answer aquaculture or forestry or a cotton gin or for tractor repair? I'll tell you just a bit later. Well, what appeared to be more market stability for the cattle sector this week seems to be fading. Instead, DTN reports that the pressure is back on as we produce this segment. Analyst Alan Brugler says he doesn't blame the entire break in cattle prices on the recent controversy over lean, finely textured beef that's made national headlines.
I think the problem is that we've got carcass weights are built up. We're about 25 pounds a head versus a year ago, heavier. So we're putting out more beef. We're getting into some bigger cattle numbers from all the cattle that were placed last summer that off of the Southern Plains drought. Those are all starting to come out of the feedlots. And basically, when we get the wholesale prices up in the $190 range per 100 pounds, we have a hard time selling it to consumers. So we've got a demand problem, we've got a supply problem. The board's reflecting that.
The USDA says a large trade trip it hosted to China in late March was an overall success. Of course, the U.S. pork sector is one area of agriculture that's already doing well in China. Exports to China, a developing market, soared nearly 200% last year. Analyst Steve Meyer of Paragon Economics in Iowa believes that rising standards of living are a factor in the booming export market.
The growing middle class. Pork is the meat of choice in China. It's a staple in their diet. And they had some production problems. They've had production problems for some time, especially with some disease losses that has increased the price of pork there. The government was very interested in trying to control price inflation, and so they were open to more exports.
Meyer adds that any percent increase across 1.3 billion Chinese people is good news for U.S. hog producers. Just before the feature story, here is the answer to the trivia quiz. It's B, forestry. A dibble bar is used to plant tree seedlings.